welcome to the deep dive. You've handed us quite a stack of source material this week. It really paints a picture of a political landscape that's complex, maybe even chaotic, and definitely moving fast.
It is. We're looking at, domestic political deadlocks, serious constitutional questions, internal agency struggles, international friction. It's all happening at once.
Information overload, basically.
Exactly. So our mission today is to try and cut through that noise, synthesize this chaos into clear, usable knowledge for you. We're going beyond just the headlines to pull out those surprising nuggets, the details that really define what's happening right now.
Okay, so what's the roadmap for this deep dive? Where are we heading?
Right. We'll start with the government shutdown. It's setting records now, so we'll look at the impact, the polling, who seems to have the leverage. Then we pivot to this pretty major constitutional fight over seating just one member of Congress.
Testing the speaker's power, essentially.
Precisely. Then we'll look at some severe internal strains, specifically at ICE immigration and customs enforcement, and also the Pentagon. After that, some high-stakes legal and financial moves, including a planned $230 million lawsuit against the Justice Department.
Oh, okay.
And we'll finish up with a look at the very, very fragile peace over in Gaza.
All right, let's unpack this right here at home then. The government shutdown, it's now week 4. It's officially past the 21-day Clinton-era shutdown. We're heading into new record territory.
We are, and the specifics of the stalemate are kind of astonishing. For the 11th time this week, the Senate failed to pass a continuing resolution, a CR. That's just the short-term spending measure to keep the lights on while they negotiate.
And the usual media line is, Democrats block bill or Republicans block bill.
Yeah, but what's fascinating here, looking at the sources, is that in many of these 11 failures, neither side really chose to advance it. It's more like a mutual holding pattern, a political game of chicken, you could say, where both sides actively chose not to vote on reopening.
And while they play chicken, the White House is scrambling, worried about federal employees calling in these sick outs. They're trying to prioritize key groups.
That's right. Air traffic controllers, obviously, military personnel, people running the WIC program, that's the nutrition assistance for women, infants, and children, vital services.
Which leads to this other really crucial point about executive power, right? This idea of using tariff money.
Yes, the administration has reportedly floated the idea of using the roughly $200 billion collected from tariffs as a kind of slush fund to pay for these priorities and basically bypass Congress.
$200 billion. That's a huge number. What's the legal reality there? Can they do that?
Well, this is where you hit the constitutional wall. Tariff funds, just like all federal revenue, legally go straight into the U.S. Treasury. The president cannot spend a single dime of it without Congress explicitly saying, okay.
It's the power of the purse.
It is the power of the purse. This restriction exists specifically to stop any president from creating a personal piggy bank with trade money, with no oversight. It's designed to prevent exactly this kind of end run around the legislature.
That distinction is critical. Meanwhile, Congress can't even agree on back pay for the federal workers.
No. Democrats want to pay everyone who missed a paycheck. Republicans want to pay only certain groups, mostly soldiers and air traffic controllers. It shows how deep the division is.
So strategically, who's holding the stronger hand in this? What are the polls saying?
Well, polls from Reuters, Ipsos, and CNBC consistently show Democrats seem to have the advantage here. The CNBC poll had it at 53% blaming Republicans versus 37% blaming Democrats for the shutdown.
But here's the real nugget, I think. Independent voters. They blame Republicans by almost 3-1, 58% to 21%.
That's a massive gap. And that kind of pressure, especially from independents, it starts to create cracks. We're seeing signs of it on the Republican side.
Like that letter from moderate Republicans.
Exactly. 13 moderate House Republicans demanding negotiation on Obamacare subsidies as soon as the government reopens. And several GOP senators are privately signaling they oppose plans to punish blue states because, Republican voters live there too and would get hurt.
On the other side, though, the Democrat resolve seems less about strategy and more about fear.
That's what the sources suggest. They're holding the line because they're afraid their base will, quote, rebel, or they'll be guillotined if they vote to reopen without getting concessions. So it's maybe a battle of who fears their base more right now.
Interesting dynamic. So connecting this to the bigger picture, what does our readership think? How long does this go on?
Well, our readership polls suggest most people see an end in sight, but not immediately. An overwhelming majority, 69.2% combined, predict the shutdown ends sometime in November.
Okay, let's shift from the money fight to something even stranger, maybe. This battle over preventing a single vote. The fight over seating Representative-elect Adelita Grijalva.
Right. So Arizona's Attorney General, Chris Mays, has actually sued Speaker Mike Johnson to force him to seat Grijalva. She won her special election for Arizona's 7th District fair and square, but the seat's been empty since March 13th.
And Johnson's reason seems pretty transparently political. It's about stopping her from being the 218th signature on that discharge petition to release the Epstein files.
That appears to be the immediate goal, yes.
Yeah.
Just to clarify for listeners, a discharge petition is a House procedure to force a bill onto the floor for a vote if it's stuck in committee. It bypasses the Speaker's control. Johnson wants to keep this petition one signature short.
So what's his official reason? Because the excuses seem flimsy and changing.
They do. First, he claimed it was impossible to swear someone in during a recess. Now, the argument is that Grijalva is somehow unique because she won while Congress was out of session, and therefore she can't be sworn in during these brief meetings called pro forma sessions.
Which are just technical sessions to keep things rolling, right?
Exactly. Just brief, scheduled meetings. And the legal precedent here is really quite clear and goes against the Speaker. There's a Supreme Court case, Powell v. McCormack. It basically says you can only deny a duly elected member their seat if they fail the constitutional basics: age, citizenship, residency. Johnson's pretext isn't one of those.
So why does this specific fight matter beyond this one seat, this one petition?
Because if you allow a speaker to use such a flimsy pretext, it sets a really dangerous precedent. What stops a future speaker from refusing to seat an entire state's delegation based on some other manufactured technicality? It fundamentally undermines the whole idea of representation.
And there's a deeper legal twist here, too, for the real constitutional nerds listening.
Ah, yes. For the super learner. Johnson's argument that these pro forma sessions aren't real sessions directly contradicts established Supreme Court thinking, specifically in a case called NLRB v. Noel Canning. That case dealt with presidential recess appointments.
So if a court actually agreed with Johnson?
Right. If a court buys his argument about pro forma sessions not being real, it could accidentally hand back power to the president to make recess appointments power Congress has fought for decades to limit. It's this potential unintended consequence they might not have fully considered.
Seems like a losing battle for Johnson anyway, doesn't it? His delay tactic seems temporary at best.
It does, because another Democrat from a very safe blue district in Texas, TX18, is expected to win a special election soon. They'll likely provide that 218th vote regardless of what happens with Grijalva.
Okay, shifting gears again. Let's look inside some federal agencies. There seems to be significant internal strain, starting with Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE.
Yes, the goal at ICE is incredibly ambitious, double the number of active agents to 10,000. And they've got a huge $75 billion funding infusion to back it up, plus incentives like loan forgiveness, $50,000 bonuses.
They got 150,000 applications. Sounds like they should be able to find plenty of people. But the story here is about who's failing basic standards.
It's really quite striking. About a third of the new recruits are apparently failing the basic physical fitness tests.
And basic is the word for it, right?
Absolutely. We're talking 15 push-ups, 32 sit-ups, and running 1.5 miles in 14 minutes. A career ICE official quoted in the sources called these requirements the minimum for any officer and described that failure rate as, quote, pathetic.
And critics are worried this isn't just about fitness.
No, critics like Senator Durbin are raising alarms that standards have been lowered across the board. The age cap was eliminated, Spanish proficiency requirements removed. The concern is that this inevitably leads to lower quality recruits and potentially increased officer misconduct down the line.
And this isn't just an ICE problem, is it? Finding fit recruits seems to be a wider issue.
It really mirrors long-standing problems in the military. Get this. 75% of Americans 17 to 24-year-olds are already ineligible for military service. Reasons range from weight issues to aptitude test scores, health problems, or criminal records. 75%. That's a systemic challenge for national security.
Wow. Speaking of the military, let's move up the chain to the Defense Department leadership. Secretary Pete Hegseth is reportedly facing some serious pushback.
He is. Even the conservative Washington Times is reporting that trust between Hegseth and the senior generals and flag officers has, quote, evaporated.
What's driving that collapse in trust?
According to the sources, senior military leaders view Hegseth's policy focus, particularly the MAGI and anti-woke initiatives, and also a specific inflammatory speech he gave, as a massive waste of time and, frankly, below our institution's dignity.
Sounds like serious discontent.
It does. One general warned the services are bleeding talent because qualified officers feel it's becoming the opposite of a meritocracy. They're losing good people.
And Hegseth's response? Is he concerned about this?
His public stance is defiant. He's emphasizing restoring standards. He celebrated sending some overweight Texas National Guard soldiers home and mandated only the highest male standard for combat fitness tests. His quote was, "Standards are back at the Department of War."
And just quickly on leadership standards, there was that withdrawal for the special counsel position.
Ah, yes. Pete Ingressia. He'd admitted to having an occasional Nazi streak, which, understandably, raised eyebrows. He withdrew from consideration to head the White House Office of Special Counsel after the Senate basically signaled they wouldn't even hold confirmation hearings. He does still have a job, though, as a liaison to Homeland Security.
Okay. Let's dive into the legal and financial world now. Some really high-stakes maneuvers happening, particularly involving the Department of Justice. Looking at the James Comey case, it feels less like legal strategy and more like, well, stunts.
The phrase table pounding comes to mind. When the law isn't on your side, you pound the table. That seems to be the approach here.
Like trying to disqualify Comey's lawyer, Patrick Fitzgerald.
Exactly. The prosecution claimed Fitzgerald had a conflict because he supposedly helped Comey leak classified info. But that's contradicted by the facts Comey shared memos he believed were unclassified. And Fitzgerald immediately returned materials that were only later retroactively marked classified. It looked like a red herring.
And the judge didn't buy it.
No. Judge Michael Nachmanoff denied their request for an expedited filter team, pointing out the DOJ had the materials for years and only raised this concern right when they filed the motion. It seemed pretty transparent.
Then there's the acting U.S. attorney, Lindsay Halligan, and her texting spree.
Yeah, that was something. She was apparently upset about reporting that implied she'd misled a grand jury about a property involved in a case. So she sent dozens of texts to her reporter, Anna Bauer, trying to defend herself.
Which sounds risky.
Very. In doing so, sources say she came awfully close to violating grand jury secrecy rules. It suggests a certain level of perhaps inexperience or maybe even desperation in that office.
But the really big financial story here is this planned lawsuit against the DOJ itself.
That's the one. The plan detailed in the sources is for Trump to sue the Department of Justice for $230 million, claiming federal investigations seriously damaged him.
Okay, but how does that work when the DOJ is run by his own appointees?
And that's the crux of it. The Deputy Attorney General, Tud Blanche, used to be Trump's personal lawyer. So the structure is potentially there for the DOJ, staffed with loyalists, to just say, you know what, he has a point. Guess we better settle.
Turning the Treasury into a payout mechanism.
The comparison made in our sources is stark. It resembles a mafia protection racket, using the power of the state to potentially extract money from the Treasury for personal benefit.
It sounds almost designed to bypass accountability. Are there any checks on something like this? Congress seems unlikely to step in right now.
The likely checks are external. One is simply massive public outrage. If the public is horrified, that could translate into electoral consequences. Maybe a midterm blue tsunami.
And the other?
State-level action. State attorneys general could bring charges against DOJ officials involved, or they could face disbarment proceedings. A presidential pardon at the federal level won't protect them from state charges or losing their law licenses. That gives state AGs real leverage.
Okay, finally, let's touch on global instability. Gaza. Verifying anything there is notoriously difficult.
Extremely difficult. Truth is always the first casualty in conflict, and this is no exception. We have very conflicting claims about the ceasefire.
What are the reports saying?
Well, Israel reportedly resumed bombing over the weekend, claiming 2 or 3 of their soldiers were killed by Palestinian forces. They've now supposedly resumed the ceasefire again.
And Hamas.
Hamas denies there's proof Israeli soldiers were killed. They claim Israel has killed 87 Palestinians since the ceasefire began, though neutral sources seem to put that number closer to half that. And there are deeply disturbing claims from Hamas that 135 bodies returned from an Israeli detention facility, Simatayman, showed signs of mutilation and organ removal, implying medical experiments. Again, incredibly hard to verify independently.
What's clear is that there's been significant fighting during the supposed ceasefire.
Absolutely. Neither side seems to be acting like they're moving towards a permanent peace right now. The situation feels incredibly fragile.
And the White House is clearly concerned. They've dispatched envoys, J.D. Vance, Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner. That seems like a high-level intervention.
It does. It signals deep U.S. concern. A total breakdown there could unravel regional alliances, undermine UN policy goals, and, yes, from the administration's perspective, potentially jeopardize any shot at a Nobel Peace Prize. Sending envoys like this suggests they realize this truce is probably more likely to collapse than solidify.
We have covered an incredible amount of ground, from the specifics of push-up failures at ICE to major constitutional showdowns in Congress and this potential $230 million raid on the Treasury.
If you pull back and look at the pattern across all these sources, what emerges is a clear theme: a rapid multi-front expansion of executive power and an aggressive testing of institutional limits. Congress, the military, law enforcement, executive finance, they're all being stressed, maybe near the breaking point.
And woven through much of this, especially that lawsuit plan, is the reported motivation of money. It reminds me of that ancient story of King Midas. Everything he touched turned to gold, but he starved because he couldn't eat gold.
A powerful cautionary tale.
So here's something for you, the listener, to think about. When the pursuit of money becomes the absolute driving motivation for political action, for governance itself, what fundamental non-monetary things, these like trust, like basic competency, institutional fitness, even the credibility of the office, what has to be sacrificed along the way?
Something to mull on until our next deep dive.